Hi, this is Shauna from Foiled Fox, and thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to be sharing two projects using the same stamp set. I'm using the Painted Peony from Conqueror 9th. It has a big blossom and then a smaller one and leaves and lots of layering stamps, and plus the berries. I love the berries whenever they're in a floral set. And then it has a matching die set to cut out those goodies. I'm using Paper Tray Inks Geometrics hexagon. I'm going to be using the outline on this, and then an embossing folder by Altenew called Mod Squares, or sometimes it's called Modern Squares. And then I'm just going to be using a hillside, and you'll see why I'm going to be using. I happen to be using Lawn Fawn Simple Hillside. But to get started, I'm also going to be using some paper this is the double thick, just a small piece of this that's 4 1/4 wide, and then a simply chartreuse card base. I have some Bristol paper. You can see I've marked it with a B in all corners so I know which one it is. Some hot press watercolor paper and some white cardstock. I'm going to start with the watercolor paper, and I'm going to start with the big blossom. I'm going to be using some distress inks today to ink it up. I'm going to start out with the biggest stamp that has the biggest coverage. It is the background stamp, and I'm inking it up with scattered straw. I'm going to spritz that with my trusty spritz bottle, and I'm going to just stamp that once. I'm not using a stamp positioner because I don't want the ink to get darker. So if I want it to smooth out a little bit more, then I am using a little bit of clear water and a brush. And I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit. I also like that in dampening it so that when I put the next layer on, it will blend a little bit more. So I'm going with that next stamp, and that is has all the shading to it. Usually there's a base stamp, a shading, and then a detail stamp. And so this one is the shading one. I am using the mustard seed. I was blanked on that. Mustard seed, and I inked it up, spritzed it, and then stamped. And I'm using the detail stamp now and using the Wild Honey. Wild Honey has a little bit of an orange cast to it, so it's just a little bit darker, and it's a good complement. I'm going to spritz that again. I'm always going to spritz it so that I can get that ink moving a little bit, so that these will all blend together nicely. Now I have just the center to do, and there is a center here. I'm going to take some VersaFine Clair ink, which is a waterproof ink. This is Morning Mist, and I'm stamping that center. Now I still didn't color in that center, so I'm going to smush some Wild Honey, and you see me using some spun sugar, but I'm going to quickly go to Worn Lipstick because the spun sugar was a little too light. I do like to use a little bit of pink. That may seem odd to you, but I do like to warm up the flower a little bit and have some pink to it. I am mixing it with the Wild Honey, and I'm just going to add little touches here in the shading area of the pink, just tiny bit, just very slightly warm this up. The yellow and pink go very nicely together, and it will still maintain its very lovely yellow cast. So I will have this big yellow blossom. And then once I've finished fiddling with all this, I going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp some leaves and the blossom and some berries. Now I started out with just doing it, how I'd normally do it, with using the base stamp and then putting a layering stamp. So but I decided I didn't want to do it that way. I want to switch it up a little bit. So I'm using my Karen brush markers. These are a watercolor marker, and I'm in love with them. And I'm just taking the detail stamp, so the last one, so you can see it just has that intensity in the center, and then it shows you kind of the outline of the petal. And then I can use some clear water and just draw out some of that paint. And I like this a lot more. It has a lot more intensity to it. And I'm using a little bit of yellow. I'm only going to be using a few markers, so you don't need a ton of these. Just using in all, when it's all said and done, for the whole everything I'm going to stamp, I'm only using 4. So I'm going to stamp a few of these blossoms. I'm not quite sure how many I'm going to use, but I am planning on showing you 2 ways you can use this stamp set. So I want to have a few of them so that I can have enough for the 2. And just putting a little bit of that yellow in the center. And it really blends beautifully. And then I'm going to go on to the leaves. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different with the leaves, and I like the way it turned out. I'm going to go back to that VersaFine Clair ink, that Morning Mist, and I'm going to stamp the shading stamp. It seems odd that I'm using gray, but it really worked very nicely and gives it a very nice look. And then I'll go back and use the Caron markers. And you can see those are the 4 Caron markers that I'm using. This is the shading stamp. Like I mentioned, I'm not using the base stamp. I'm going to let the Caron markers do that. And this stamps enough of the outline that I can just go ahead and use that, and just use the clear water. Put a little bit of the green. See, I'm going to moisten these leaves just so that I'll have a little bit of movement. I'm going to put a little touches of the green right kind of at the base, and then I'm going to color the whole thing. And if I need more color, I'll just touch it with a little bit more of this watercolor marker. The marker, it's just a wonderful intense watercolor, so you can either use it just full strength, so it's very intense, or you can use the water, the brush with the water like I'm using here, and kind of brush out some of that color and make it a little less intense. So I always put it in the most intense areas, and then use a clean brush, and then a clean brush with water, and then just kind of brush it out. Now with the these little berries, I'm using kind of an aqua blue, just touching them right at the base, and then just kind of drawing that out again. And if I want a little bit more intensity, I can just touch it again very lightly. I use very, very little. I am in love with these markers. They're fabulous markers. To check them out, you can go to our blog. There's a link down below, or it's foiledfox.com/blog, or you can go to our website and you can see them there. Anyway, to continue on, I'm just going to continue finishing out all of these leaves, and I can see that I was doing the berries there. And I do like a little touch of yellow at the tip. Just kind of blends that out and gives it a little bit more interest. And I liked the gray with it. It gave it a very interesting look, and kind of a more vintage look to it. But you can use whatever you would like. I just like those colors, the way that they turned out. And now I'm going to take the matching dies, and I'm going to cut out all of these goodies that we just got through painting. So here they all are. And I'm just using, I can just touch up here and there around the edges. I didn't want as much white showing. So I'm just taking maybe a touch of the marker and then blending it out with a clean brush. There's a lot of ink still on these flowers anyway, so it will blend out, but I just didn't want it to look so stark, so I just did that. Now I have some white cardstock. I'm going to cut out 2 of these. I'm just using the outlines. Then I'm going to take some liquid glue. I like the Tombow glue, and I'm going to be stacking one on top of the other and just adding a little bits of glue. If I can get my glue working. But I'm just going to add little dots all the way around and then stick these down, stacked on top of one another. It's really easy if you just use the liquid glue, because it slips enough before it completely is permanently stuck together, and you're able to move it around until you get perfect placement with one right on top of the other. Now that that's done, I'm going to use the background. I have a panel here, and that is with Bristol paper, and I chose Bristol paper because I wanted a white background, but I want it to be able to accept a little bit of water. So I'm using some more distress inks again. I'm using speckled egg and iced spruce, and then peeled paint. And I'm just going to use very little of this. I've spritzed it a lot. I've loosened it up. I have a piece of acetate, and I like doing this because on the acetate, because I have a lot more control over where this ink is actually going to go. Now I have just a clean brush, and I'm just spreading that out a little bit. I'm going to pick up some more of this ink, and I can just touch it around. I want a lot of white still showing, but I want just this smattering of ink on there. I've got a paper towel that I'm blotting a little bit of it, and then I can just continue with the little piece of acetate. It's just quite a flexible piece of acetate that you can get off packaging or anything like that, and I just save it for these kinds of things. And I splattered a little bit there too, but now it's all dry, and I am going to add some tape, double stick tape to the back of it, and I'm going to adhere it to a white card base. It is going to be the exact size of the panel, and I think I actually used 4.5 by 6.5 because I wanted it a little, this is a big blossom, and I wanted to really give it a lot of space. Now I'm just going to do my arranging. I'm back at being a florist and arranging these flowers, and I haven't stuck anything down yet, but I'm just getting an idea how I want it to go. And I think that works out. And then I want to do that because I want to put the sentiment down and get an idea where that should go. Now I'm going to take that all away. I'm going to stick down this frame. I just love this frame. It's a great one to just give a little bit of detail to your card. Putting just little bits of glue again. And I had an idea. I eyeballed where it went when I arranged all of that. I put some foam tape on the back of the flowers. But first I'm going to use my stamp positioner. I have one of the sentiments. There's a few wonderful sentiments in this stamp set, so it's real complete, using that same Morning Mist VersaFine Clair ink. And I've stamped it, and it is Hello Friend. I like things that I can use for lots of different things. Like I could have a birthday sentiment on the inside, or I could just send this for a, just like it says, hello friend, or I could use it for just about anything. So I like to use very versatile sentiments unless I know exactly what I'm going to use it for. So now I'm just using that foam tape for the flowers. I just want to move that just a little bit, and I'm going to go on and tuck in the leaves and the berries, and I will use a little bit of the liquid glue to do that. Greenery always just really gives a finished look to your floral display. And I have to say, berries, I just love berries, and so anytime that they are included in a set, then I have to use them because I just love them. I'm going to use 3 of them here and just tuck them in here and there. And I think that's our card. I think we're finished now with our first card. And it's a great way to use this. I'm going to just use a little pigment micron pen just to put some little dots for the center of that flower. But now we're going to dash and go on to our next card that we're using this same one, same flowers that we did. And I've got the double thick paper. And you can use this, just regular cardstock, but I like the double thick. Put it in the embossing folder. I'm going to use the rubber mat in my die cutting machine. And look at that. It's a 3D kind of embossing folder, so it gives a very deep impression. And then when you have double thick tape, it makes it even more wonderful. I'm going to use one of those hillside dies. You probably wondered what in the world I was using a hillside die for, but I just wanted to cut it on angle there. I have an A2 card base out of Simply Chartreuse. You saw that earlier. And I'm just going to put some glue going around it. I started out with the double stick tape, but it doesn't like to adhere so much of this to this paper, because this paper is 100% cotton, and it has a tendency to pull up. The liquid paper is much better. Now that I have that white there, I'm going to just take the extra flowers that we have, these little flowers. I'm just going to arrange them. I'm getting an idea where they should go because I want to stamp the sentiment. I'm going to use Sending Love on this one. And I think that's where I want it. Put it in my stamp positioner. Have ink it up with the Morning Mist. And then just, I used a little bit of acetate there on top just to see if I got my positioning right, and I did. So I'm going to just stamp it down. I have some foam tape on the back of the flowers, but not on the back of the leaves. And now I've got an idea that that's how I want it. So I just took a mental picture of it, and I'm going to quickly peel off the foam tape, release tape, so that I can put these in positions before I forget what I did. So I'm going to just put these all in together, just like I had it before. And the last thing is I'm going to add is the berries. Well, I do want to add one more thing after I get the berries on here, is I do want to add some enamel dots. These are Altenew enamel dots. You can see that there's different colors of green, and I'm just going to add those to just kind of draw out the pattern. But here it is all finished, and it's a great card that you can use for most any occasion. And I hope you enjoyed this one, but we're going to go to the next one that we did in the very beginning. And it's really hard to choose for me which one that I like best. Maybe you can let me know which one is your favorite, but this big blossom really kind of steals the show, I think. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it gave you a few little tips on how to do things. Here are a few of the supplies I used: the Concord and 9th Painted Peony Stamp and Die Set, the Paper Tray Ink Geometrics Hexagon Die, the Caron markers, of course, one of my all faves, and the Altenew Mod Squares embossing folder. But you can see all of the supplies, every one of them that I used, in the blog. Just click the link down below. And you can also go there and see lots more inspiration. So we hope we'll see you there, and thank you so much for joining me. Do, if you haven't already, do subscribe. We would love that. We'd be over the moon, in fact. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.